In this video, we will see how you can structure React Native app in larger teams and what patterns that we need to follow to create a production ready application. Let me ask you something before starting the video. If your React Native app has 200 plus files and everything is inside the screens, component and utils, so how confident are you that it will survive when your team grows to 8 to 10 developers or more than that? So today I'm going to show you how we structure React Native app in large teams, production ready, scalable and conflict free. This is not a beginner folder structure. This is how senior engineers or tech leads structure the real app. If you have seen most of the tutorials, people usually start it with creating the screen and put it into the components or the screens folder, and they create utils services like this if we have seen in this code. So it works well, there will not be any problem, but for smaller projects. But once your app grows, it will introduce more problem, like you will face merge conflicts, shared components become messy, API calls spread everywhere, and your business logics leaks into UI. So what is the worst part? When you're working in a large team where there are more than one team which is managing the application, larger team don't structure by file type, okay, and nobody knows ownership, so they structure by features. If we see this folder structure, this is fine, this is what we usually follow, but if this app grows, this code will become messy. So how we need to structure it? Let me show you another example what should be the better idea to structure this code. Instead grouping by the type, we will group by the features. So what does that mean? I'll show you this folder structure. So here I have created a feature folder in the source directory, and all the features I have laid out inside features as a folders, as a directories. So what is the benefit of doing this? Now let's assume you are working on a complex application. There are multiple teams involved of doing that development. So now any of the team which is working on authentication, they never touch the codes which is there in the calendar or a chat features. Inside features, each features owns everything related to it. In the authentication, we will have all the screens have components, the state management will remain everything inside the auth directory. So this basically gives the confidence to the teams to manage the large code base. Also, this type of structure helps to clear the cleaner PRs, and PRs can be reviewed easily. Okay, next we will discuss few patterns. These patterns are the most important. If we follow, the code will be more cleaner and easy to maintain. There are more patterns, but let's discuss these 5. So first one is service layer pattern. Now if we go back to the code, let's assume you are working on some feature. You are creating a authentication screens, like here a login screen. User have typed the email and password. Let's say open the application and user type on email and password and do sign in. So what basically we do, we will make an API call and go to the server. If this email and password is correct, then we will give the authentication success message, right? Or like we will basically return a token, or basically we'll give a message if the user is success or not. Here in this component, we need to make an API call. That is one thing, right? So what this pattern says, never call API directly inside screens. Okay, so that's a very big mistake when we directly call the API from the screen itself. So instead of that, we create a service layer. Okay, so let me show you the example how we basically create a service layer. Okay, now if I show you the login screen after implementing the service layer pattern, here I have added a hook which is basically use auth. Now what it is doing, it basically call the service layer and check if the user is valid or not, right? So now here a hook between the service and a screen, right, which basically call the service layer. This service I've added over here, auth service. This basically call the API to the backend to check if that user is valid or not, and the use auth is a hook that basically call the service layer, and screen will directly use that hook only. So this was the before. Screen was directly calling the API. Okay, API function, even this function you have added in some directory, that doesn't matter, right? So the best pattern is screen just use the hooks, right, and hooks call the service. So this is what the service layer pattern is. Always create a services, utilize the services inside the code, UI stays clean, business logic will be reusable, and this testing become more easier. Okay, so the next pattern is custom hook patterns. We already discussed about of using the hooks. So all the hooks, we do mistakes, we call what we do, we make more screens more messy, right? So better to create a custom hooks, and these hooks will be remain inside the feature directory, like here the auth. Okay, so using this custom hooks pattern, the hooks will basically handle all the API calls, loading state, error handling, and if you also want to put business logic, like if you are making something inside your code, you can also put that into the hooks, or you can also create the utils, or you can create a helper functions. And by doing this, screen only renders the UI. It will not do other tasks, like if you're doing some validations, loading state, error handling. Never, we should not do that in these screens. Okay, so this basically separation, what this actually make the app more scalable. Okay, so next we will talk more about the shared folders. The third one, shared is not a dumping ground. It basically contains a reusable UI components, because now here if we have created all the features directories, you can create a one shared folder where all your constant, where components, you can put it there, right? So basically shared folder contains reusable UI components like button inputs, global hooks, constant, themes. All this we can put it in the shared directory. So for the shared folder, what rule we can follow? If something is used more than 2 features, move it to the shared. Okay, and otherwise we can keep it inside the feature. If it is using more than 2 features, better to move into the shared folder. Okay, so now let's move to state management strategy. So for the state management strategy, now a big question, what basically you will use in your application? Redux, context, or just end? The clear answer is basically a rule: don't globalize state unless required. We don't need to depend on everything on the state. Wherever you have your requirement, then only use the state management. Okay, so feature state will inside the features only, like the authentication state will remains inside auth directory. Related to calendar, AI, right, you can keep all that in their respective folders. Basically the global state, right, what can be global state that you can put it in the global state management, like the auth session, theme, app level config, and others that you can put it into the global state, and everything else always better to stay in the local directories. So if you are working on very simple basic features, like if you have just 2 to 3 features directory, then it makes sense you can put it into the global state. But if that feature is very big and it contains lot of code, the better is to keep it always stays local directories, in the local directories. So everything else stays in the local, only except this type of states like managing the auth, theme, app level configs, and etc. Okay, the next one is absolute imports and barrel exports. Barrel exports we mostly use in libraries, but if you can use at some context in your application, that would give better results. For example, here if you have a auth directory, you can put it index.ts. Okay, so now if you want to import it, you can just import it at features/auth, right? So by doing this, everything we will export from a single file, and if we have to import it, this is how we will import the login screen from feature auth. And in the auth there is a barrel file, the barrel exports, right? This can be like this type of export, or you can say this type of exports from the auth feature itself. Okay, so basically this will give us clean, readable, and refactor friendly code base. Mistakes that we generally do: everything we put it inside components, massive folders as we discussed in the root source directory, API calls inside screens, no separation of logic, heavy use of global state. So this type of mistakes basically kill scalability. Okay, so if you are building serious applications, or you are working in a team where there are multiple teams involved on building a large scale applications, so we need to focus this type of structure. We need to follow some rules, some serious structures, and this is how large team ship React Native application or the front end React based applications in production. So yeah, that's all in this video. I'll pause now and see you in the next one.